Ken Trahan with Lenny Vangilder. It's our First NBC Bank Weekend Review, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. First and foremost, national championship games tonight. Let's touch on that briefly. Florida State, Auburn, Seminoles are favored. Rose Bowl, weather, great, ideal conditions, and most people are expecting a score fest, Lenny.
And I'm not so sure that's going to happen.
Yeah,
and we've seen that scenario as recently as a couple of years ago. The last time Auburn was there, it was Auburn and Oregon, and everybody expected first team to 50 to win, and it was anything but that. And I think, the defenses in this could potentially stand up a little bit and make this a little bit of a lower scoring game. Honestly, I could see it being a 28-24 kind of game as opposed to a 45-42 sort of thing. So I do give an edge to Florida State. I think, they're as close to an SEC team that doesn't play in the SEC based on their skill set and their speed. That's, quick snapshot of the way I see it.
Yeah, I watched Clemson beat Ohio State, and what Florida State did to Clemson speaks volumes. I like them to win the game, too. I don't sell Auburn short. They play in a great league, and Gus Malzahn's done a great job, and I have no doubt they can move the ball, but given a month to prepare for that spread option attack, that read attack of Auburn, I think Florida State will do enough to slow them down, and I do think they will win the game. The Saints, of course, with a big win over the Eagles, advancing to the next round, and, of course, they're traveling to Seattle, a place they're familiar with, on Saturday afternoon. Early forecast, 100% chance of rain. You're in Seattle, after all, mid-40s, so a different problem to deal with, facing a much better team on the road and facing probably wet conditions.
It's going to be a challenge, but based on what we saw Saturday night in Philadelphia and the way the Saints won that football game, you have to be encouraged. Not relying on a wide-open passing game, ground and pound with Mark Ingram and Kyrie Robinson to account for 185 yards rushing, a formula that has worked tried and true for Sean Payton. Doesn't do it a lot, but when the Saints get to 140 yards rushing, they have never lost in the Payton era, and they got to 185 on Saturday night. And, I liked what I saw there. I thought the offensive line did a terrific job of opening up holes, and those were not that wasn't a fluke 185 where maybe there was one big 70-yard run. It was a lot of 5- and 6-yard runs, and that to me was the most encouraging thing to come out of that win Saturday night over Philadelphia, and I think it bodes well for this team going forward.
Maybe it's matchups, but you just have to give Sean Payton an enormous amount of credit. Here's a guy that was willing to take the big chance of getting rid of his kicker and benching his left tackle in Week 15, of all things. And Armstead has improved incrementally on a weekly basis. And, of course, Shane Graham hasn't missed yet, including kicking the game winner at Philadelphia. So you just have to credit Payton for making these bold moves.
Yeah, that was, the kicker less so than the left tackle. Your offensive line has a tendency to be one cohesive unit, and to make a change there that late in the season could certainly have disrupted things. Obviously, against Carolina in Week 16, it was a bit of a problem, but obviously Armstead was facing a very difficult task. He'll face it again because the crowd noise in Seattle is going to be enormous, and that's that so-called 12th man that they have up there. That's going to be a tough task for him. The defensive players that he's facing, on the other side may not be as good as what he saw, in Carolina or even in Philadelphia. But that the ability to hear the snap count and to be able to react right away is the biggest challenge that he's going to face on Saturday.
No doubt that the December 2nd meeting was a learning process for the Saints, and they'll implement some things the second time around as a result of what they learned from the first time. Not the least of which, Lenny, is maybe just run the play that's called and don't worry about trying to go through all the mechanisms of changing things in a difficult environment, because that gets them in trouble. They end up burning early timeouts or getting delay of game penalties.
Yeah, it's hard to communicate, and you have to be prepared for that. It'll be interesting to see. We saw how the Saints dealt with the whole you can't play in the cold, you can't win on the road in the playoffs, you can't win on the road, period, this past week. Now they're going to start getting the questions about what makes you think this is going to be any different. And how are you going to deal with the noise? And, last time they came in with the big flashcards trying to call some things. It's going to be interesting to see how Sean Payton and the team communicate in that regard this week, if we're going to see that whole message about the sweatsuits and the chicken and the color of the power drink that you're drinking.
It is what it is. Listen, Seattle's the best team in the NFL, 13-3 record. They did it in the best division in the NFL as well. There's no doubt they're the better team, and there's no doubt they should be favored, but it doesn't mean the Saints cannot win.
Absolutely. And point to one stat that is in your blog at Sports NOLA this morning. Number one seeds in this divisional round, where they should have an edge because at worst they're playing, or at best they're playing the number 4 seed, number 4, 5, or 6 seed. They are 7-9 in the last 8 years. So more times than not in that span, the visiting team has gone in and beaten the number 1 seed on the road. We saw it last year with Baltimore going to Denver. Saw it a couple of years ago where the Giants went into Green Bay and beat a 15-1 Packers team. So it's not impossible.
So much will depend on Keenan Lewis being able to get on the field. We won't know the answer to that until later in the week. Do not expect Paris Harrelson to play. We expect there'll be some sort of announcement about his health, which has been reported elsewhere, that he's torn a pec muscle, and obviously if that's the case, a pectoral will sideline him the rest of the way.
Exactly, and if that's the case, you will certainly see him go on IR, and they'll bring up either someone from the practice squad or go sign someone off the street to fill that spot on the roster.
All right, the New Orleans Pelicans are coming off of another loss, and this one was at Indiana, while the Colts were busy pulling their amazing comeback win over the Chiefs. There in Indianapolis, the Pacers were coming back from a deficit to beat the Pelicans and whipping them in the second half. So New Orleans on to Miami tomorrow night, out of the fire into the frying pan, if you will. And, of course, the big news here is the health of Ryan Anderson. And I wish we could tell you more. We cannot. A cervical stinger, at last check, still hospitalized in Boston. We expect, Lenny, that they'll have some word coming out prior to game time, obviously on Tuesday.
Yeah, you would think we'll hear some news here shortly, and of course you hope and pray for the best in that situation. It was certainly a scary situation. That said, that Friday night win over Boston, after that happened, the ability to stick together, a big late shot by Anthony Davis to win that game, and that was certainly encouraging. And as we said last week, that was the one spot you figured that the Pelicans had to go on the road and get a win, because that Indiana game, the Miami game coming up here Tuesday night, the two best teams in the Eastern Conference you have to face there.
Congratulations to the Riverside boys and to the Salmon girls for winning the 4th annual Allstate Sugar Bowl National Prep Basketball Classic, another successful event at the Hilario Center. And clearly, we hope you enjoyed our coverage at sportsnola.com and look forward to the 5th annual next year when, again, the field's going to be outstanding. This is a firmly rooted event now.
Yeah, it's really has grown legs and become a bigger and better event each and every year, established on the calendar now. And it's now we're getting into district play, or about to get into district play on the high school front. We're getting into conference play on the college front. UNO actually began last weekend. Tulane and LSU will begin this week. So as college football ends Monday night, we start paying a little more attention to college basketball.
And we look forward to it, and we look forward to telling you all about what's going to happen this weekend coming up on Friday, so stay tuned for that. Lenny, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, have a great week.
That's our First NBC Weekend Review, brought to you by First NBC Bank, with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank. And don't forget Sports NOLA TV, special time at 5 p.m. Monday night. That's 5 p.m. Monday night on WHNO television. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Have a great week, and God bless you.